Hello, so today is going to be a different video. So I've got this mini Paceman 2-litre diesel N47 2013 plate, as you can see there, and the goal for today is to change the turbo. So I've got another video, one of my first videos, where I show how to, well, I showed a long way around taking the engine out, well, moving the engine forwards to get the DPF off. Car's been running fine since, I had loads of diagnostics through. However, there's a bit of lag between 1000 and 2000 revs pretty much, and then the car shoots off and it's fine. So I've taken the actuator off, checked it inside, the worm gear is fine. I've taken the airbox off, and when you look inside, I can feel a tiniest bit of play in the spindle, but there's also a load of oil in there as well, and there's also oil in the intercooler pipes, which are these here. So taking the turbo out, now the turbo itself is held on by 3 bolts and a clamp, and then the connections to the airbox. But the major problem is to get to those 3 bolts, you've got to literally, well, the only way I found to do is to loosen the engine, or take the engine mount off, support the engine with an engine hoist, take off the expansion tank, take the airbox off, take the airbox off, and then move the engine forward, then disconnect it from the DPF, then go underneath, and then loosen these 3 bolts. You can't get to them from here. You can feel one of them, but not 3 of them. So I'm going to start by taking all the auxiliaries off first. So taking the engine cover off, taking the airbox off. I'm not going to take the expansion bottle off, I'm going to move it. Move that out of the way, move all these connections so I can get to the side of the EGR essentially, and we'll hopefully take it off. It's going to take a while. I reckon this should take about 2 to 3 hours. We'll see how long it takes. Okay guys, so the turbo is off. I've had to stop filming because I couldn't work, it was just impossible to get off, but I'll explain what I've done. So basically I've taken the exhaust, the turbo will be on this way. So we've done this bit, we've taken all the air pipes off, we've taken off the oil feed which goes in there, and then we've also taken off this clamp and this gasket. This is incredibly difficult. I also recommend to put the, an original BMW one, because these can leak and it's a right pain to get on. I've bought an aftermarket kit, but I'll basically show you. So I've basically bought, this is the old turbo I've taken off. I bought a refurbished turbo because I don't want to spend 1500 quid on a new one. So you get a refurbishment kit. So that gasket there, sorry, that seal will go there. That gasket goes on there. These are really awkward because you're trying to keep that in place and then put this on whilst holding it in place. It's really awkward to get on. So I've had to loosen the DPF and undo that clamp I told you not to undo, just so you can get the DPF to move around a little bit. So that goes on there, that goes on there, that's got to go on really tight. One thing I do recommend though, which reminds me, we've now got a welder, is to spot weld this in, because it's the nut, because it's so bloody hard to do. Get your hand in, and then what happens if it's loose? The nut falls on the floor and then it goes behind the heat shield, inside the heat shield, and it's awkward to get on. So I recommend, I'm going to actually stop for a second and just spot with that really quick, just so it doesn't go anywhere, because you've got to put a lot of force on that. And what happens is, when you put this on, if you loosen it, and imagine that goes in the heat shield, then you're stuck. Okay, so then we have this oval type washer or gasket that goes on the underside of the turbo over there. Here, wow, those 2 bolts, Allen bolts, were so hard to get off because you haven't got access to the damn things. Anyway, so that's that. I noticed they're not in the kit, but it doesn't matter. Then you have two seals. One goes there. I'm not too sure where this one goes, to be honest. Not too sure where this one goes. I don't think it goes there because there's nothing actually goes there apart from the clip. I'll have to look at that. I'm not too sure where that one goes. Okay. Anyway, we'll find out where that one goes, but I can't see where it goes at the moment because you've only got one there. That clip's on there. Then you've got the downpipe. Then you've got the DPF there. Then you've got your 3 bolt there. Your secure retaining bolts go in there. Size 14 socket will do for them. Again, these two are easy to get off. This is a nightmare, so you have to loosen the DPF to be able to get to this. Then you have these two with your washers. These are the actuator retaining bolts. Those hold the actuator in place. Not sure why you have 4 of these, but you basically got 2. Well, you need 2 copper washers, and basically the copper washers fit above and below the oil feed line that goes in there. And then you have this. Now this actually goes on. I haven't got it here, but it basically goes on the clamp. Well, on the pipe. There's a pipe and then a clamp that secures into there. But I'm not sure why there's 2, probably just a spare. Then really important, you've got a syringe. So I'll go through this later on, but just to make sure I don't forget, when you fit your turbo on, you've got to fill this with oil and prime that cavity there. If you don't prime it, you turn the turbo, you risk blowing the turbo straight away. So you have to prime the turbo. Very, very, very important. We'll do it anyway, but just in case I don't forget, because it's really late. I've been going for 4.5 hours already, and I've just got the turbo off about 5 minutes ago. It's really bloody awkward work to get off. Anyway, it's off. Now is the slightly easier bit of putting it back together again. So everything's in reverse order. So I'm going to put the turbo on, put the securing bolts on first, then connect the oil feed. I do it in terms of what's the most awkward, and putting it back together again, that is really difficult to get back on. I can tell it's really hard to get on because you can open this, you can only open this so much. So the easiest way, which is why I said to tack weld that, so the easiest way I found is we'll tack weld that on, open this up, don't open it too much so you don't damage it, open this up and put it on the DPF, and then when you make them together you can just slot the gasket in and then put them together again, but then that won't fall because you can't really get your hands in. Oh yeah, and then there's this, that's your mounting gasket, which goes under there. It's quite thick actually, which goes underneath there. And that's about it. So if I had to rate this on a level of 1 to 10, I'd definitely class this as probably an 8 because it's really awkward. Okay, let's get it back in place again. Okay, so the new clamp is in with great difficulty, but it's all lined up. Hopefully it's not going to leak because it's such a pain to get in, honestly. The other thing I'm slightly worried about is a slight dent in the end of the DPF on the flange, so I'm hoping that's going to pull together. I think the problem with the dent is actually where the clamp closes, so I'm hoping that's not going to leak. Anyway, we'll have to find out. Worst case, we'll turn it around, or we'll see. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the sensor on, connect everything back up again. I'm going to leave this off just for the time being. I just want to see if it leaks visibly, and then bolt it all together. Because if it does leak, I need to tighten that up a bit more. But I'm cautious not to thread with the actual nut. Okay, so I've just put this on. Now what you've got to be really careful with this is it's really hard to get on with a new seal on. So you need to make sure that this is touching this. So you've got to put it in, then whack it with a mallet to make sure it goes in, otherwise it'll start leaking from here. The only problem with this is you can't turn it out, it's so stiff. So I'm going to try and line it up pretty much how it was before. So this has to line up with this bracket, because when you're underneath the car you can't turn with your fingers, you're just not strong enough. And then get the little Allen bolts in. It's really awkward to do. So we'll get this on next. Okay, so I've got the 3 bolts in. Now there's the oil field pipe. Now the really hard bit is you've got to get this on, and there's a gasket on. So what I'm going to do is put the gasket on, hold an Allen bolt and try and screw one bolt in to hold it in place. Otherwise, try not to drop the camera. So, okay, so I've just cut to the end bit, so I've had to loosen the DPF, and I did have to actually loosen this and take the clamp off. Because I had to move the DPF in order to get that clamp at the very top, really hard to get on. So where we're at the moment is that the turbo is tightened up, the oil outlet is tightened up, and all I've got to do now is put the bracket on for the DPF to secure the DPF. Then I've got to tighten this clamp, and then secure the DPF from the side, put the wheel back on again, and then we can load the Insta software to clear all the faults. Okay, so the turbo and actuator are installed, the DPF is back on again, which is, my god, that was an awful time. One thing I forgot to mention was when you take off the, I'll show you a picture of it at some point, but when you take off the DPF to turbo clamp, you should always get an original one. I made a mistake of buying exhaust gaskets, and I completely forgot, and I got some from Latvia. Nothing wrong with that, but for this particular clamp, just the one between the turbo and DPF, I highly recommend you getting a original clamp. So I'll put the old original one on, but I'm going to buy a new one. So what I've done now is, so I've got it on, car's revving fine, but obviously the engine management light's on, and I've used the Insta software, and it just comes up with all these errors. So all I'm going to do is just clear these fault codes. There's loads of videos on how to use this out there, but if anyone wants to know, I could put a video, I guess, on how to use it. So what I'm going to do is I've cleared the fault codes, and I'm going to go for a drive and then run it again, just to make sure there's no other faults, no boost leaks or anything like that. I was going to check for boost leaks, but I can't hear anything. It seems I drove it around the block, it's driving fine, and I can't physically hear anything at the moment. So I'll do another test. So what I'll do is, whilst I'll do a start vehicle test, I'll start running the test again, and then I'll check it by the time I go home. I'll just go for a drive and we'll check it. So basically looking for all these to be green. So there's one there that's orange, so I can tell there's a fault already. Well, two faults, but we'll have a look at that in a minute. That could potentially be a boost leak. It's quite common on these when you take them apart and pull them back again. They're quite finicky. So we can check for that, but it's driving fine, but there's obviously something else that needs to be adjusted. So we'll have a look at that, and that's it. Engine light is off. We are now able to drive. We can rev the engine. See, before I couldn't rev the engine past 2000. I can rev the engine past it. It's nice and smooth now as well. No hissing or noises. So we'll take it for a drive and we'll see how it goes. But I think for the purpose of this video, that is going to be the end of this video, guys. And I'll see you on the next one.